Hello, and thank you for joining us today for The Issues. I'm your host, Vern Fuller. On today's show, we focus on mothers who've lost their sons to street violence. In St. Louis, homicides were up last year, and an overwhelming number of the victims were male. According to reports, most of the killings were related to drugs or drug money. But in many cases, it's just a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Regardless of the circumstances, the grief and sometimes anger can be overwhelming when a mother has to bury her own son. Our guests today will tell us their stories and provide some advice for mothers out there going through the same thing. We want your input as well. Please give us your questions on our STL TV Facebook page at The Issues. We'll read a few of them live later on in the show. But first, it's heartbreaking when a mother loses her child to street violence. One former gang member who lived the street life says mothers can only do so much, but when their sons are out of control. STL TV's Tim Lampley reports.
Mother only can do all what she can do, and that's just be a mother, you know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to these young men out here. You know, you got to have men stand up to lead these men. Can't no mother. You know, women can't lead these men.
Teddy Willingham has strong opinions about youth who get caught up in crime. He should. He was one of them. A former gang member and drug dealer, Teddy knows why it's so hard to change the minds of misguided young men.
Because, you know, young people lost a sense of hope. You just think about it.
Teddy's had plenty of time to think about his own behavior, having served several years in prison as a result of his crime-filled younger days. Today, he serves as a role model in the community. But back in the day, he was hard-headed. The tragic deaths of his friends and seeing their mothers grieve helped turn his life around.
When the violence was going on, when I was losing my homeboys, when I was seeing my homeboys getting shot, and I was hearing their mothers cry and hearing their voices, then they kind of like, you know what I'm saying, they compelled upon me, because these was the mothers in the neighborhoods that was taking care of us, looking out for us.
Teddy was fortunate. He escaped the violent street life that too many young people do not. And after talking with people out here in the community, it's clear why mothers feel guilty and wonder if they could have done more to help.
Because when you're a mother, you want what's best for your children, and even though it's not your fault, you still kind of feel guilty about it because you're the one that's supposed to raise them and steer them the right way and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I would feel guilty only because I would feel like what went wrong. I have a lot of male figures in my son's life, so for him to steer off or want to, you know, just explore the world, I would be devastated.
School teacher Jacqueline Person had to fight back tears thinking about the mother of one of her former students who was recently murdered.
He was shot multiple times, an intelligent young man, but I just believe that it was his environment. We used to play chess together, and so when it happened, it really touched all of the teachers, even though he had moved on from my school. So it was a great loss. And I have two sons myself, and like on Mother's Day, I was telling, when we say Happy Mother's Day, we have to lift up those mothers that have lost their children, because, you know, we're blessed enough to have our sons, those of us that still do, but we never know one day to the next.
Wow. Joining me on the show today are Jeanette Culpepper, who lost her 22-year-old son in 1991 and soon after founded the organization FASS, Families Advocating Safe Streets. Also Elizabeth Watkins, whose sons were only 28 when they were killed. She lost two. And Sheila Price, whose son disappeared in 1996. His body was found a year later in Illinois. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to The Issues.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Jeanette. Tell us your story.
Actually, 23 years ago, this May the 31st, at 2:30 a.m., my son was killed at 4200 of West Page.
West Page.
And he became number 89 St. Louis Police Department homicide that year. My world just turned upside down, and it hasn't been the same, and it'll never be the same. The biblical cord that the doctors say they cut is not cut, because every now and then I get that jerk reminding me of his birthday or the day he left me.
Okay. Sheila?
Yeah. My son, Charles Anthony McCoy Jr., he was 20 years old, November the 10th, when he left home with some friends. I had been looking for him for about a week, and I knew something was wrong because that was out of his character. I have raised 3 sons. He was my middle son. So I looked around, have friends looking. We searched hospitals, police department, and they found him on his birthday, November the 16th, 1996. He had been shot 3 times in the head.
Wow. Mrs. Watkins?
I lost 2 sons. My first son, he was a middle child also, and he was killed in Miami in Dade County, and he was 28. The next year, in 91, my second middle son, he was killed. I have a hard time, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I always have a hard time talking about them because I was very young when I had my children. And I have 5, 4 sons and 1 daughter. And my 4 sons were close together and in age. So you grow up with your kids. When you have them young, you grow up with them and you make a lot of mistakes, but you never think that they're gonna leave before you do.
That's true.
And they were good-hearted. They would do anything for their friends. They were always bringing young people home. But it's just hard because you never, ever can fill that void in your life.
Of course. Let me ask you a question that's probably on the minds of many of our viewers. Were your sons hanging with the wrong crowd?
My son was.
Okay. Mrs. Culpepper?
I've been told, but I don't know.
Okay.
They didn't bring it to me.
Okay. Mrs. Watkins?
My son that was in Florida, I hadn't seen him in 3 years, so I can't say about him.
How about your son that was here?
The one that was here, no, as far as I know, they were not. I knew most of his friends, okay. And I'm not going to say that it was a bad crowd.
Okay, okay.
I can admit that my son was hanging with a bad crowd because it was affiliated with gang drugs. I was a single parent raising 3 children, working full-time, working part-time, and trying to go to school to make a better life for my children. But the thing is, like I was telling earlier, because of what happened with my child, that made me feel stronger to do something different in the community, to think positive and not the negative, because I hate to meet another mother who's then lost a child, because that's a very hard thing to do.
Well, let me ask you, ladies, how do you respond to the comment in the package covered by Tim Lampley where the young lady said, a mother can't raise a son all by herself in substance? That he needs a father figure to keep him on the right track.
I don't feel that that's so true. I feel like this. I come from a family of 8. I'm number 7 out of 8. I'm next to the baby. We grew up in the Ville area. Back then, the mailman could spank you, the neighbor could spank you. I think it doesn't really take a man to raise your children. That is just a label out there. It's just like being a label of, I feel like that racism is there, but for us, it takes a village. It
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter who helped raise your child. It doesn't. My thing is, my youngest son right now is 25 years old. He's not gang affiliated. He plays basketball. He works full time. You know, he went to Flow Valley. So it didn't take that. It's just the wrong person that your children wind up hanging with, the wrong crowd.
Okay, let me ask before we have to take our first commercial break, of all of my 3 mothers that are here, how many of you were single moms raising your children?
I was.
Okay. Okay. Mrs.
I'm
Culpepper?
sorry.
Well, I'm married. I was just separated, but I agree with her. They don't, you know.
That shouldn't make a difference?
It doesn't make a difference, no.
If God wanted that way, He wouldn't have had it that way. But, you know, you just do the best. It's a whole lot of men out here with the best of education, and they were raised by their moms. It's just the time that things came up where the boys may branch out. But there's a whole lot of mothers kept their foot in the boy agreeing and making words after day, so I ain't gonna, that's her opinion, everybody has their own.
Sure.
But I'm not gonna lay down and die because I ain't got no man.
That's right.
Understandable.
You know, we raise our children the best that we can, and we, as women, strong women, we feel like this. I always did participate in my children's education. I volunteer in our community. So no, I don't agree with that. I just don't.
And I also understand that you all ran into some problems actually having your son's murders investigated and ultimately a prosecution brought about.
Yes, well, I never, I even went at Jeanette's encouragement to go and talk with the police, and still they gave me no answers, and the detective, he expected for me to give him information to investigate my son's murder, but so there really sometimes you feel like you have no one, you know, and I feel like if the police see that you're a single mom, then they feel like there's no man there, so they don't really make it their priority to help you out.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Let's take a break. When we come back, the mothers here will talk about the importance of recognizing your power, what you can do when your son has fallen victim to the streets. That discussion when we return.
Watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes twice a day. They have the time.
Welcome back to The Issues. Our focus today is on mothers who've lost their sons to violence. Ladies, other than waiting around for the authorities, what else can you do when your son has been murdered?
Well, for number one, what I did, yes, we are still grieving. It's not one day that don't go past. I can say what I did, I started making flyers, started questioning those young individuals that left the house with my son.
So you did your own investigation?
Yes, I sure did. I did, most
Much
definitely.
like the detective may have done it?
Yes, I knocked on doors. I passed out flyers, had reward money out there. It's more like they have a code on the streets. Snitches, they get rid of. I walked the inner city, the most worst place where gangs affiliated with. I walked the streets at night, passing out flyers. It didn't matter because I wanted justice for my son.
You really went on the front line. You really did, Sheila. Jeanette, what is your response to that? Was that your approach?
Yes, it was. I was in the Army at the time, serving 12 years Army Reserves. So I put down Uncle Sam's mission and picked up my own. And I realized then how we were treated. I didn't hear from the detectives. I thought they was gonna come to your home, give you a card. That didn't happen. My son died at 2:30 and I was back at the scene staring at the blood around 8:30. I went over and the sun came up and I take it to the streets. After I talked to the detective, he said, well, keep us informed. Keep us informed, but that don't mean nothing but go do it. That's what inform means.
Elizabeth, what about you? Did you do something similar to these other two mothers?
At the time, I didn't. I was trying to get over my first son's death.
Understandable.
And then I had another death, not get over it, but try and cope with it.
Sure.
And I was trying to hold my family together.
How far apart were the deaths of your two sons?
1 year and a month.
Wow, 13 months.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're recommending things that you can do to other mothers who may find themselves in the same set of circumstances, are you saying take the streets and do your own investigation?
It would.
Is that your recommendation?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You need to stay on the police. That's what you really need to do. I mean, like, be their second breath. When they take their first breath, then you be the second one to stay on them, to let them know that.
That sounds safer than what you did, Sheila. Yes. Let me take a moment to go to one of our Facebook questions. James Quaid from the Issues Facebook page asks, given the fact the mainstream media, music industry, internet, all glorify not only violence, but a litany of self-destructive behavior, what do you think is the best way to address the root of the problem?
I would think the root of the problem, with my children, I try to get them involved in, different things in the community. My problem was when I went to try to get help for my children, being a single mom, like the YMCA and everything, was expensive. I was a single mother. They was like basically telling me, wait till something happened and then we'll help you.
Something like what?
Like taking them, to the YMCA and let them be there because I couldn't afford a babysitter.
Okay.
So I wanted them to just give me a voucher or something to help me along with my children. But the streets, it's like when you're trying to ask for help, it seems like they turn their back on you. And so that's how I felt as a single mother trying to do the best that I could with my children. They want to charge you too much to take your child to the YMCA now. All of that stuff used to be free when we was growing up. You had your neighbors or the babysitting your children. But my problem with this situation is totally different. Yeah, they seeing black on black crime and they feel like they don't care because either they label our children with the sagging of the pants or either because they're in a gang affiliation or drugs or whatever. We didn't raise our children to be bad people or anything like that. And I'm just speaking from my point of view.
Let me get the other mothers as well in our final minute here. Mrs. Watkins, Mrs. Culpepper, what do you think the root of the problem is?
Well, as I always say, it takes more than one ingredient to make that German chocolate cake good. It's going to take a lot to curb this situation, and that by means you're going to have to give the kids jobs, open up recreation centers for them, and when somebody cries to you for help, give it to them.
Okay, Ms. Watkins?
I feel in the city of St. Louis, we don't have enough recreation for our young people, and especially for our young black men. When I was coming up, we had bowling alleys, skating rinks. You have them, but they in the county. We need something here in the city.
Ladies, I want to thank you all so much for joining us and sharing your stories with us. When we return, we'll be joined by our panel of community leaders and a mother whose son was shot 18 times. We'll have her story coming up. In the meantime, let's go to comments from the St. Louisans on today's discussion topic.
What can be done to help curb violence on the street?
It would have to take family. And I mean family, friends, neighbors, the community to help that, to stop all this violence.
When you're trying to teach a little person, my son is 2, trying to teach this little person right from wrong, and then they have to go out into the world. That's the scariest feeling ever because it's like, oh my God, don't look that way, don't look this way, just go this way, It's scary.
We never know one day to the next with all this craziness if we are going to have our children the next day. So I just like to let all the mothers know that I am lifting them up, and if there's anything I can do to help in this society to curtail this is something that I really want to connect with somebody about.
Welcome back to The Issues, where we're focusing on mothers who've lost their sons to violence. We're joined now with Adolphus Pruitt, president of the St. Louis chapter of the NAACP, Omar Maldonado from the Hispanic Leaders Group, and Pastor Roderick K. Burton from New Northside Missionary Baptist Church, as well as Carla Austin, whose son was shot 18 times but miraculously survived. Carla, is there anything we can do to help our sons avoid becoming victims?
Well, I feel silence is golden until it happens to your child. When you see your child laying down on the ground, you feel you have to do something. And I think in most communities, they do not speak up.
I have to ask, your son was shot 18 times.
Yes, he was.
His recovery had to be miraculous.
Yes, yes it was.
And what was the road to recovery like?
Learning to walk. His whole right leg was shot off. It was miraculously put on by a rod to hold it together. And he was shot 3 times in the neck. He had to learn how to talk again. He was shot 3 times in the chest.
How old was he at the time of the shooting?
He was 18.
Good Lord.
At the time. Learning how to just get his motor skills back. But God allowed for it to happen, and for him, even though his leg was shot off, he can still walk. Even though he was shot in the neck, he can still talk. And even though he was shot in the chest, his heart still beats. So why would we remain silent on issues as far as violence?
We want to find the solutions, and I think I've got the right panel of guests here to do so. The civil rights movement, as far as I recall and understand, actually began in the pulpit. Reverend Burton, is the answer to our community within your pulpit and many others?
Yes, I believe that the answer to this problem of violence is from the best answer from the places of faith. What we're dealing with is heart issues. You can have police tactics to reduce violence, you can have various programs, but if it's not within an individual's heart to want to treat his fellow human being with dignity and respect, you're going to have that problem.
Well, we have police, but that's not working. I mean, short of us having a military state where we call in the National Guard to give us safe streets, what is the other option for a solution?
Well, you know,
Omar?
when we talk about having police, the police are there to enforce, you know.
What about protect and serve?
Well, they're there to protect and serve, but every time when this conversation comes up, we start talking about how they're there to enforce that law, but that's how you treat something that's already happened. What we need to discuss is how do we change the environment and get things and start working together in order to change the outcome. You know, a lot of times we'll talk about solutions and what are the solutions for this and that, and I'm a true believer that not only do we need to work on the solutions, but we also need to take a close look at what the equation is so we can change what the outcome is going to be.
Is there action amongst the Hispanic leaders in taking action on this issue of violence?
Absolutely. Currently, we work with the city police, and we also work with the county police. We have a meeting, an open forum meeting that we have available for everyone. Our group is, although we're the Hispanic Leaders Group, we understand that there's much more to St. Louis than just one particular ethnicity or race, and that's why we open our doors to these conversations. And that conversation that evening will be with the chief of police and talking about some of the issues that arise, and also what are we doing to take a preventative measure with instances that can come out of control, or just basically build a stronger relationship between the community and the people that are serving the community.
Sure. Adolphus, this has to concern the NAACP because this is the #1 killer of black males in a certain age demographic, more so than cancer, heart disease, hypertension. I can go on and list a few others. But how is the NAACP reacting to this issue?
You know, it's an issue of more than anything of socioeconomics. And until we really address the disparity in household incomes, we're not going to deal with this issue. Same thing with education, same thing with health care. It's socioeconomic. You know, when it comes to this issue, there are 2 numbers that are always consistent, And people do not want to put them together, and we like to do that. One is that this violence that's going on for African American males has been going on since 1960. Been number one every year since 1960. This is 2014. The only other number that's consistent with that number is unemployment rates for African American males have also been the highest every year since 1960.
How about that?
So those two numbers, they operate side by side, and one impacts the other. I don't care whether it's whoever the household is. The minute you can get more resources in that household where somebody can live the American dream, then you'll see a lot of the things starting to change. You'll see a change on the street. You'll see a change in the schools. You'll see a change in the church. You'll see a change everywhere. Because people then had the ability to at least live the sort of lifestyle that they've dreamed to live about. And everybody's not looking to be rich. People just want to have a decent place to live, a decent job, and they like to raise their family. And I don't care who it is, the minute you increase their household income, the first thing they do is concentrate on trying to give their kids the best sort of life they can. We all do, because we all love our kids.
So you're saying that this type of street violence goes hand in hand with low income?
It's socioeconomics.
Okay.
If you're out of work,
right,
you either got two things to do. You're going to sit under a tree and die, quit breathing, or you're going to go out and you're going to find a way to get the resources and the other things that you want. And if you can't get them legally, in most cases you're going to find some illegal means or some other means of getting them.
Drugs.
It can be drugs.
Right.
It can be, they caught the guys the other day stealing air conditioners off buildings.
How about that?
Selling them.
Okay.
People are going to find a way to make some money. They're not just going to sit somewhere and just wither away. It doesn't happen.
Reverend Burton, the New Northside Baptist Church has a special event coming up. Tell us about that.
Yes, the Clergy Coalition is calling for a week of prayer next week, for the whole week in advance of the summer. Instead of being reactive, and we have a summer where the clergy is, being reactive, being proactive and calling for all the community to come together in prayer. The kickoff service will be at New Northside Monday night, Memorial Day evening at 7 p.m., which will focus on victims.
Who is this coalition?
The St. Louis Clergy Coalition it's been around for years. Our Adolphus knows them, but that's just one of several coalitions that are coming together. The Archdiocese is on board with us, the Ecumenical Leadership Council, and a number of others, too many acronyms that I can remember. But what we're calling for is that city unite in prayer for a cure of this violence. This trend is going on and on and on. And so we believe if the people of faith would come together and call upon the Lord for there to be a heart change. The other thing I want to touch upon very quickly is, and it came up during a Facebook question, is that I believe the communities of faith need to help people to understand and see through the collective messages that are negative impacting upon young people. If for 10 years of their life all they hear about is music that glorifies violence, television shows violence, one thing after another that basically legitimizes violence to one another, that has to be taken into account. And we live in a technological age where people are bombarded by media images more than ever before in human history. And so the leaders of the community have to help equip the members of the community to understand that what you listen to, what you play in your ears, what you watch day in, day out will have an impact on forming who you are.
Pastor, thank you so much for that. Before we wrap up, we hope this has provided an insightful discussion about a very important issue facing the St. Louis community. We'd also like for you to be part of our efforts, so please join us for our next show and continue to support us here at STL TV. As you know, it takes a village. Now continue leaving your comments on our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and check out our YouTube channel. I'm Vern Fuller, and for all of us here on The Issues, create a great day.